Have you ever watched somebody do a DIY and then cringe because of what they're doing to that piece? I may just do that to you guys this video, but I promise the result at the end is gonna be amazing. Hey there, my name is Yami and I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I am going to be taking some thrift store items that I have previously purchased. You might have seen them in some of my hauls, and I am going to give them extreme makeovers. Now, if you're new here, I love sharing high-end home decor DIYs on a budget. I also am documenting the transformation of our current fixer-upper. So if you enjoy videos like that, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and stick around by subscribing. Now, before we get started, I wanted to make sure to let you know that I have an announcement at the end of this video. I am going to be sharing our next area that we're going to be transforming in our home, and I'm going to share all the details of what I want to do. So make sure you stick to the end so that you can get a sneak peek of what's happening over here behind the scenes. All right, with that, let's get started making over these thrift store finds. All right, so for the very first DIY, we're going to start off with this tray that I purchased at my local Goodwill. And this tray actually only cost me $1.29. Now, the first thing I did was remove all of the dust off of it, and with a damp rag, I used some rubbing alcohol to remove any residue left over. And then I took some Waverly chalk paint in the color Ocean, and I began to paint the sides and exterior of the tray. Now, as you see here, I did not paint the base of the tray where the flowers were. It's because I'm going to actually add a nice covering over it as soon as I'm done painting. I did go ahead and do the bottom of the tray as well, and I gave everything 2 coats. The next thing I did was take Folk Arts Home Decor's clear wax and applied it all over the tray. Now, what I like to do is whenever my kids have 1 or 2 or 3 socks that have holes in them and we can no longer use, I make sure to wash them, and then I keep them in a little pile, and whenever I need to apply like stain or clear wax like this, I use one of those socks in order to apply this stuff. And it's great because I get another use out of these socks before chucking them. Now, here's a new product that I have not used before, and I came across this grass cloth textured contact paper online. I got it off of Amazon, and I'll link to it in the description box below if you guys want to check it out. But it really does have that grass cloth texture. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on the center of the tray where that floral pattern is, and I just measured the interior part of the tray and then also mapped out the same measurements on the contact paper and then cut them to size. I made sure to flatten everything out and get really nice edges on all 4 sides of the grass cloth in the interior portion of the tray. And that was it for this transformation. Now for this next DIY, I'm going to be using this basket. I got it for 99 cents at my local Goodwill, but I'm not going to be doing anything to the basket because it's perfect as is. However, it was missing something, so I decided to go to my stash and see what I had. And I remembered that I had these 3 styrofoam balls from my local Dollar Tree, as well as some ribbon that I had left over from other projects that I kind of bought a little bit too much, and I thought I'd go ahead and use my items that I had on hand. Now, these ropes that you see here are from Hobby Lobby, and I always like to get them when they're 50% off because the white rope is actually $1 when it's on sale, and then the gray rope is $2 when it's on sale. And sometimes it's worth getting something that's a little bit more higher quality from another store, and you'll see the difference in your final product. And I love both of these ropes, and instead of just using one rope, which is what you usually see people use, I decided to go ahead and use both of them together to create this beautiful striped, almost nautical look for these decorative spheres. Now the trick to getting a nice sealed end is to actually glue down one of the ropes first, and then taking the second rope, wrapping it over the end of the previous rope, and gluing the very edge back in. Now I wanted to create several of these, and I wanted them to all kind of be different. So I was kind of looking through my stash, and I found this piping that's supposed to go inside fabric. It was removed from something else that I previously had owned, and I just kept it in case I needed it for something, and I decided to use it to give my second decorative sphere a little bit of a different color and texture. And also you can see that there's varying heights between the ropes, so it kind of adds a different element to it. And for my third sphere, I had this rope that I had unraveled. It's that nautical rope from Dollar Tree. Well, the minute you unravel it, it gets really messy, and I just didn't want to use it. And I still had this piece hanging around because I didn't want to throw it away. So I decided, why not use it for one of these little decorative spheres? And it actually worked very well because by gluing it down on the styrofoam, it kept all of the individual strands from becoming undone. So it worked for this application. And here they are completed. Now for the third makeover, I am going to be using this purple glass vase that I got for 99 cents at Goodwill. Now the first thing I'm going to do is remove that little raffia piece that's around the top neck, but I am going to keep it because I'm going to put it back on. And then I am going to clean it with some rubbing alcohol to make sure it's nice and ready for paint. Now after it was nice and clean, I took it outside and I spray painted it with some Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the color linen white. Whenever I spray paint items, I always start from the bottom side up and then flip it over, because if there's any imperfections after I turn it over, it's always going to be on the bottom. Now, you can always use a nice satin finish spray paint and just spray paint it white, and there you have it. But because I was going to go an extra step and do a further application, I decided to go ahead and use the spray paint chalk paint instead. Then I took my Rust-Oleum chalked aged glaze, you guys know I use this all the time, as well as one of my kids' old socks, and I took some of it and rubbed it all over the vase. Now those little bumps were a little bit hard to get around, and sometimes I did use a brush to get around those little nooks and crevices, but then I did still go over with a sock in order to remove any excess. I wanted this to have that different dimension and kind of look almost like stone maybe, and it worked out great actually. I love all of the texture that this little vase had on it originally. And finally, when it was dry, I added that raffia piece to the top, and all it needed was some florals. Okay, so that DIY that I was talking about that might make you go, what is she doing? It's this one. And for this makeover, I'm going to be using these 2 candlesticks. And I purchased these for 99 cents a piece at my local Goodwill. And I'll also be using some wooden beads. These are leftovers from a package that I bought from Michael's a while ago. They sell them for $9.99 and you can use your coupon for them, so you can get them as low as $6. Now I'm just going to string them on some baker's twine that I already had on hand. Now I need as many to cover that ridge that goes around the top portion of the candle that you see right there. Looks like perhaps maybe this had glass hurricanes over it that would slide over them. I'm not sure, but they didn't come with them. And that gap was still there, and I wanted to do something completely different and change the look of these. So that is why you see me using these wooden beads. Now, in order to make the candle look like it was always like this, I wanted to tie in the bottom of the candlestick as well, so I added another layer of beads to the bottom space you see here. I use hot glue for this, and if you try something like this, make sure you use quite a bit. If not, your beads will move around a little bit. That is something that I encountered, but I was able to address it with a little bit more glue. And I simply tied the string as tightly as I could and then cut it as close to the beads as possible. Next, it was time to apply paint, and the color that I chose was Folk Art Home Decor's chalk paint in the color Sandstorm. I wanted to try a color other than white, but something that would transition very well into spring. Now, as you can see here, I colored everything, including the beads. Now this is the part that might make you cringe a little bit because it's not going to look pretty right away. It's going to take a little bit of effort, but I was determined because I had a vision in my head. Now what I did was I took some of the spackle from Dollar Tree and I started applying it all over the corners, nooks, and crevices, and little gaps that were around the beads. And I did this to both the top portion as well as the bottom portion of the candlestick. I did this to both candlesticks. Now, as you notice here, this one is not painted first. I wanted to see what was going to be better for me to apply this spackle, whether it's the one that's not painted first or the one that is. And what I found out is that the spackle will actually adhere better to the chalk paint and not the smooth finish of the wood. So if you were to do something like this, I would paint it before applying the spackle. Now you want to let this sit overnight at the very least so that all the spackle can harden, because if it doesn't harden the way it should, then when you start sanding it down and removing the excess, it's going to start breaking apart on you, and you want to be able to get in all those little nooks. I wanted this to look like aged candlesticks, so I came in with some sandpaper and I went in through all of the edges around the beads and around all of the trim areas. I even had a little bit of help from some tools from Dollar Tree that I had picked up. And I started kind of carving out the beads from all that spackle. I will admit that this is something that took quite a bit of time, but I like to get things exactly how I want them, and I wanted to be able to deliver a really pretty piece at the end. So patience definitely helped in this DIY. I also used a sand block for the bottom as well. I wanted to make sure that the areas that did not have the beads to be nice and smooth, and then the area with the beads to have that little bit of an aged, filled in effect. I used a chip brush to remove all of the excess dust, and then I gave everything 2 full coats of chalk paint. Once all of the chalk paint dried, I used some of Debbie's Design Diary's white wax, and again with an old sock, started applying it all over the candlestick, making sure that it would get caught in all of those little nooks and crevices. Now I did find that using a very small artist brush helped getting the wax in all of those little nooks and crannies, so that's what I used after a little while, but I still spread everything with the sock. Now to the right you see where I added the wax, and then this to the left right here is without any wax. So you do see how it lightens it up a little bit, and then it adds that extra detail by bringing out those nooks with the white wax. Then after the white wax was dry, I sealed everything, again using my Folk Art Home Decor in clear wax. I let them cure overnight, and these are the final results. Okay guys, so for this next DIY, I am going to show you guys what you can do with that scrap fabric that you have lying around your house and actually use it to your advantage when it comes to seasonal decor, no matter what pattern it is. Now this little wooden form you see right here is actually from Dollar Tree. I did buy it for a Valentine's DIY, but then decided not to. However, it ended up being the perfect size for this project, so I am using it as a template. I use my fabric pencil in order to trace the form on the fabric. Next, I cut out the heart shape. And you can make as many or as little of these as you want. Now because I wanted sort of a rougher edge, I did sew these with the right side out. And I just did a simple stitch all the way around, leaving a space in order to fill it with some polyfill that I already had on hand. Now you can use as much or as little as you like. However, I do like to overstuff them. I think the fuller they are, the better. And then after you get the consistency that you want, you just want to sew that little opening with a simple stitch. Then I came back with my pinking shears and I cut the rough edges to have a little bit more of a cleaner pattern, but still be open and raw. We are now at the second to last makeover. And for this one, I am going to be making over these beautiful candle sconces that I found at my local Goodwill. And I got these for $1.99 a piece. They were in great shape, but as you can see, they weren't the same color. And I thought I could do something to make them even prettier. Now I made sure to clean these really good. I used some rubbing alcohol for this as well to get any residue off, because usually you find things at Goodwill and they're always sticky for some reason. Now because these are very ornate, I wanted to use a simple white paint for this, and I used Folk Arts Home Decor chalk paint in white Adirondack, and I gave everything 2 coats. Now once both coats were nice and dry, I came back with some sandpaper and I began to distress these. Now because I'm going for a more high-end cottage farmhouse feel in my home, I wanted to make sure that they had that antiqued aged look to them, and I think that distressing them like this and leaving larger areas distressed versus just little simple lines gave it that extra touch that it needed to give it that antique feel. Now because I was absolutely loving the way these were coming out, I decided to go with a higher end wax, and I chose Debbie's Design Diaries clear wax in order to seal these. Now this wax deepens that white a little bit, making it a little bit more richer, and it darkens those exposed areas to give it an even higher contrast. And I just love the finish that this wax gives as well. I let the wax cure overnight, and let me tell you something, this has got to be one of my favorite thrift flips of all time. For the final thrift store makeover, I am going to be making over this frame that cost me $3 at my local Goodwill as well. First thing I do is remove everything from the frame. Next, using the Color Home Decor Chalk Paint Sandstorm, this is the same color that I used for my candlesticks, I gave the frame 2 full coats. I made sure to get the outer edges as well as the inner edges of the frame. Now while I do not show this, I do actually come back and add some of the Home Decor clear wax to this in order to seal it. While that second coat was drying, I took that same grass cloth contact paper that I used in my very first upcycle in this video, that blue tray, and I wanted to cover the glass portion of this frame in that contact paper as well. I made sure to trim off any excess contact paper that was hanging over the sides of the glass. And I made sure that everything looked great from the outside of the frame. Then I took this small wreath that I already had on hand, as well as some Dollar Tree ribbon, and proceeded to hang it over the glass that was covered in contact paper. And I apologize for the changes in lighting that you see in these shots. My camera, for some reason, was auto compensating for the light that was coming in, and I didn't realize this until after I had filmed everything. Once I had the wreath hanging exactly where I liked it, I just put the backing back into the frame and closed it. And here is how my final thrift store makeover turned out. I think it's perfect for spring. So those are my thrift store makeovers for this episode. Make sure to hit like if you enjoyed this video and let me know in the comments below which one of these was your favorite. And now I want to share with you guys what the Latino engineer and I are working on in our home. Now, you might remember our laundry room space. We previously changed it up. I shared the previous mood board with you guys and I showed you guys everything that we were planning on doing to that space. But if you have been following us on our second channel, the Latinos Next Door, you know that we just recently replumbed our entire house and we moved the laundry room downstairs into the basement. So now I have this space and I'm gonna be reworking it. You guys know I do not have a pantry in my kitchen and I have been going down the hall to get all of my items for food preparation, which is totally fine. I've been used to it. It's been over a year and it's not really that big of an inconvenience. However, it's kind of small. And the closet that I'm using would work better as a coat closet because we don't have one on our main floor. So I'll be recreating a coat closet out of the current closet that I'm using for my pantry, and the space where I had my laundry room, I am actually going to be creating a huge pantry. And these are the plans for that space. Now, before taking away the washer and dryer, this is what the space looked like. Now, there's still some areas on the walls that have not been completed. However, now that we're finishing out the space, we're gonna complete everything and finish it off so that it doesn't need any more work. Cabinets to the bottom, as well as open shelving up top. I'm probably gonna be doing a temporary, maybe peel and stick backsplash, and I am gonna be adding different items in order to make the organization a little bit easier for me. Now, if you're interested in learning how to create a mood board like this, I do have a video on how you can do this yourself, and I'll go ahead and link to it in the description box below. Now, because this space is going to be open, I want to make sure it has really nice finishes and everything looks nice and crisp and clean. Now, having a pantry away from the kitchen may not be for everyone, but right now we have this space, and honestly, it's the best use of that space for us. And I'm really excited about how it's gonna turn out. We've already got the cabinets, I've already got the design features that I want in it, as well as all of the materials to create the shelving. I'm really excited to get started in working in this space, and I cannot wait to share the complete process with you guys. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Let me know what you guys think of all of the design features that I'd be planning on doing in this space. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next week for another one. Until then, adios.